Welcome, Dayspring, to our Candid Conversations. With me today, I've got Annette and Joel, and we're going to be having a conversation around how life is during this season and what life's looked like for you and how we're actually going to do it well as a community. So thanks for being with us, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. So I guess first port of call that we'd like to talk about is like what has life actually been like during this season for you? With isolation and COVID-19 and everything related to that, what's life been like for you guys?
Interesting, in one word. From a viewpoint of being an older married couple and with grandkids and no children at home, we've really appreciated just having extra time together. Yeah, awesome. But it's actually been quite challenging and to communicate and make room for each other and just navigate each day. And there's been a lot of clashes of what we both want to do. And so it's actually been quite I'd say for the first 4 or 5 weeks, it was like a bedding in time of how do we do this? We're actually not sure how to do that, but we're in a much better place now. Have you found that?
Yeah, there's definitely kind of the initial shock of the situation, and you know, it's like this worldwide thing. Like one of the things I was thinking about is I'm not sure that we've ever experienced like the world wars were, you know, in some countries really affecting the whole world, obviously. Yeah. But it's the first time there's been this thing that is really touching every country person in the world. And so that's been, I don't know, kind of surreal and sort of unifying in a weird sort of way. Like, you know, everybody's sort of going through it together. And so I think, something that's been interesting for me is personally, not been that awesome at long distance relationships, and you know, at the moment, aside from my wife and kids, every relationship I have is a long distance relationship. and so, God's been really like using it to train me to just like listen to those little voices of like, you know, like I might think of someone and to actually act on that, to actually go, I'm going to let that person know that I'm thinking of them, rather than like that me thinking about them is enough for me. And then I just keep doing what I'm doing. And so, I feel as though like that's definitely something that I'm hoping will be like, and, you know, wanting to partner with God, forming that in me in this time, so that like moving forward, I'll still have that. And so, you know, relationships will be better that aren't like right in my face. You know, like those incidental bumping into people at church, all that isn't there. So, but when it is there, there's always going to be people that, you know, God will put on your heart, and you know.
As I was going to say, as a dad of young kids, how's it been for you as well?
Yeah, it's been. I've liked working from home. Just sort of being around the kids. It's definitely been a challenge to sort of switch modes from kind of like a work headspace, real task, and then walk out the office door and have to really make a conscious decision to connect with the kids, connect with T, and not just sort of like drag all of my tasks, you know, into the home and sort of like, you know, I'm stressed about getting stuff done and, you know, and whatever. I'm like, no, I can't spend time with you right now. Can't you tell I'm super stressed because I've got all these things that I've got to do? I'm like, well, you're not doing them right now. Why can't we, you know?
For sure.
But it's been awesome. Like, I feel as though, like with one of my kids in particular, I feel as though he's gotten more vocal with kind of like what he needs and wants of me. And I've been, you know, like, I think better at responding like right in the moment, rather than like, I've just got to do blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you know what? Yes, we can do that right now, and I can do the thing that I need to do after we do that.
Awesome. What about you, Annette? Because you've got older kids as well. Like,
I think one of the greatest things that we've experienced is actually with making room. We're getting out of the doing and into the being, and that's in our own relationship as well. So we're actually making a point every day of sitting down, having a cup of tea with nothing particular to talk about, because when you're together, I mean, you're talking all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
But in that space, it's amazing. Creative things happen. We make plans. We actually just sit and chat with each other. One day I think we just watched lizards play. I mean, that was just really out there.
That's awesome.
But we didn't realise that lizards play, you know. But the greatest thing for both of us is actually making connections with our grandchildren in a creative ways. We've been Zooming in with the lifting of the restrictions. We actually went and visited our kids in
How
Sydney.
good's that?
And I spent a whole hour talking to my granddaughter. It was just wonderful.
That's awesome.
And just about what she's doing at school. I mean, I do that, but not that intentionally. We
Yeah.
always, family times, get chatting, but I actually sought her out and we chatted for it. And
awesome.
I'm just going to keep that going.
That's so
and the
good.
same with our kids that are in Victoria. I'm actually booking a Zoom in to spend time with my granddaughter Florence, who's been homeschooled. So a lot more intentional. I want to carry that out. A lot more intentional with making room with Neil and I just to chat and be together. And, even though you're retired and you're older, it's busy. I think for a moment it's busy. So I hope to carry that through making room and being intentional, connecting with my grandkids a lot more.
That's awesome. So there are going to be people in like similar life stages to you. So with older kids and then young kids. So I guess the question for us to think about is like, what does it look like to be a supportive community to people in similar life stages to where you guys are at?
Good question.
I think for people with younger kids, it's like you said, so it's a really busy time, especially for people that are trying to work from home. Their boss is expecting the same level of output from them, and yet they're trying to homeschool their kids at the same time. It's been really, really, really tricky. And sometimes you sort of get to the end of the day and you're like, all I can do right now is just crash and so, like some people kind of getting Zoom fatigue, like they have so many Zoom meetings during the day with their work.
I know that feeling.
And then, and then there's home group, which is like a Zoom thing at the moment because the best way that we can connect right now. Yep. And so I think just those because of where things are at right now, we can actually go over to someone's home, sort of just making the effort to reach out and to connect with someone, even if you're like exhausted, like sort of go, okay, I know that if I spend time with someone, it's going to be refreshing to me. And yeah, it's like, it's difficult, but it's like taking the time, the opportunity to reach out to someone and say, hey, come over to my house, or can we come over to yours, or, or whatever. That initial sort of decision can be hard, but definitely worth it. Yeah.
That's awesome. What about you, Annette?
I've heard this spoken before, that I've actually become a lot more vulnerable. It's been it's quite an insightful shift for me. I realise I'm not as vulnerable as I think I am. So, I've been more vulnerable with my children, and we're not doing so well today, and they're opening up as well, and with my friends, and just reaching out and saying, hey, I'm not doing so well today. I'm a little bit low, and just that's something's broken me about that. I've lost that kind of independent, especially when you've got kids and grandkids. You think you have to look after the whole world. Well, that's not the case. You've actually got to receive back, and so I'm learning to receive as well as give out. That's awesome. That's a great shift for me. It's just bringing healing, and I'm actually hearing the Lord's voice better, because He can actually come and talk to me about areas. Hey, I really want to help you here.
Yep.
So I'm hearing Him more clearly.
That's awesome.
Because I'm becoming more vulnerable.
Yeah, that's so good.
So.
That's really good. And I guess to wrap up, like moving forward, like this is going to be a slow change, coming out of all this isolation and moving back into whatever normal life looks like after this. And so I guess what does change look like? Like what's changed for you guys in this process? And then what things are going to be stick moving forward? Have you got thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think we've chatted like with staff and I've had conversations with friends around like establishing internal structures and that sort of thing. is going to benefit us regardless of what's going on.
Yep.
You know, whether there's instability in the world or there are external structures.
Yep.
Having those internal structures, you know, an example of an internal structure is, all right, I'm going to connect with God as my first thing, whatever that looks like, you know, whether if it's just lying in my bed, praying, connecting with God, you know, just like, you know, like, who are you for me today? Like, what do you want to show me today? Or, you know, reading the Bible, spending time in worship, whatever it looks like, drawing, journaling, whatever. To sort of establish that rhythm means that regardless of what's going on in life, whether it's, you know, going swimmingly well or everything's going pear-shaped, like having your internal world really anchored to Jesus, you know,
So important.
and nourishing that relationship with God, you know, through those kind of rhythms and whatnot, is something that I think has kind of been highlighted in this season, but is always helpful.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, my prayer is that we all kind of establish more of that in this time. And I think, like Annette, you were talking earlier about, really, I guess, relationships have been sort of like distanced in one sense physically. And so it's kind of what I'm hearing is people are sort of valuing relationships a lot more.
Yeah, definitely.
And my hope is that we'll carry that through and that we won't forget that, you know,
that we
once we're all able to be with each other again.
Totally.
And that we, really, really value the relationships that we have.
I think you touched on something really good then, in that our time with God, it's not always going to look the same as well during this time. Like, I think that's what I've found personally. It's that it shifts and changes during this season, that I've had time to do things that I might not normally do. And I think that's probably, like, seems true of you, and I'm sure it's true of a lot of people. How it works out is probably a little bit different, and it will be interesting to see what it looks like going forward as well. What about for you, Annette?
I think I'm a little bit like you when you're talking about internal structures. I'm actually looking at the external, how I live the day. And the biggest change for me is when I have time with the Lord, quiet time, I take everything with me. It's a big change. My Bible, my journal, my phone, my diary, everything. He's actually in every part of my life now. And I actually hadn't realised how much I compartmentalise things.
Yeah.
And so going forward, that's the way I'm going to do things. It's just been wonderful. It's been fun in that place. So I've really been freed up, you know. So he's just in every part of my life, and that's been quite an eye-opener for me in this time. And I'm going to go forward with that.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thanks, guys. That was so good today. I'm so encouraged by the stuff that you shared, and look forward to seeing what life's going to be like on the other side of all this. Hey,
Yes.
it's going to be interesting. So thanks, guys.
Yeah.
So good.